In this tutorial, we're going to use Photoshop CC 2020 to go through Classroom and Book Chapter 5, which is all about quick fixes. So you can see we're going to actually deal with a number of different elements and different types of things you can do with Photoshop. And we're going to go ahead and start with correcting red eye. So let's go ahead and go to our bridge. And let's go to our red eye start. We can do a right click, open with Photoshop. Or you can open it directly from Photoshop. Let's do a file, save as, first initial, last name, underscore Photoshop, it's Classroom in a Book, red eye, and we take start off there. And let's go ahead and save it as a PSD. And for this one, you're actually going to turn in several different documents. So let's go ahead and say save. And the first thing we're going to do is go and correct the red eye. So let's grab our zoom tool. You can kind of grab the zoom and you can zoom in a little bit here so we can kind of see her eyes a little bit better. And let's go ahead and grab that red eye tool, which is under the spot healing. Just down here. And it's the red eye tool. And we're going to go ahead and we want to, under options, we want to go ahead and make the pupil size about 23%, so up here on the top, and the darken amount to about 62. And the next thing we're going to do is just click on the eyes themselves, and we're going to make that red eye basically disappear. So that's very nice. There's no reason for you to turn in anything with red eyes when it's so easy to fix. Let's do Control S and save what we've got so far. All right, let's go ahead now and brighten this image a little bit. So let's do a view fit on screen. And you can see that it's kind of a dark image a little bit. Let's see what we can do with it. So let's go to our adjustments panel and let's play with the curves adjustment. It's the third one over on the top. And let's go ahead and click auto and see what you get there. So it gets much brighter. You also have other options. You can play with some of the presets that are here. So let's go ahead and try one that says lighter. So I think I like that one a little bit better. And if you don't like it, you can always do the reset right down here at the bottom. Go back to the beginning. And let's go ahead and try one other thing. Let's go ahead to our adjustment tool in the curves panel, which is the little finger. And let's go to the center of her forehead and drag up. And we're going to kind of create a curve point from there. And it kind of brightens it from a tonal level. And I like that. It's pretty good. So let's go ahead and flatten down that image. So let's do layer and flatten image. So it's going to go ahead and grab and put all that data in there. And let's do a Control S to save what we have so far. So now what we're going to do is adjust her facial features with the liquify feature. So let's go ahead and go to filter and come down here to liquify. From liquify, we want to go ahead and we're going to get a face aware liquify. So this is one right over here. And we want to do face number 1. So if you can't see it, go ahead and make sure you expand that out. And from here, let's go ahead and look at the eyes section. And the eyes, we want to make both eyes the same. So let's make sure that those are linked. And let's try 32 for the eye size. And we see our makes her eyes a little bit bigger. And let's make her eye height 10. So if you were to, now see it only did one of them because I don't have them linked, so I'm going to go ahead and link them and make both of them 10. So if you unlink it, let's make it really obvious. Let's make one of them like 60 and see how much bigger it gets than the other one. So let's go ahead, switch it back to 32. So I just want to kind of get you to see how those linked features work together. So now let's go ahead and close eyes and let's look out the mouth now. So with the mouth, we want to go ahead and look at the face shape section, or we'll look at mouth first. And for smile, let's go ahead and bump that up to 5. And for the mouth height, let's bump that up to about 9. So we're going for just a little bit more of a smile than we had before. Oh, mouth width goes back where it was. Put that back at 0. So I'm going to hit tab and get out of there. All right, so we're making a little bit happier. Let's go ahead to shrink that down and let's go to her face shape. And for her face shape, let's make her jawline bigger. Let's make it a 40. So we're going to make her wider, and her face width is going to go up to 50. So you can see how easy it is to change those different elements. You could also play with the drag the arrows back and forth here. Kind of, easily give people that facelift they've been looking for. So go ahead and play with it until you like what you have. Let's go ahead and deselect preview. So you can kind of see what we had before and what we have after. And let's make sure we have everything's the way we want it. And let's go ahead and say OK. So face aware only works when it recognizes the face in the image. So sometimes if it's too far away, if it's covered by something, that face aware isn't going to work. So let's go ahead and do a Control S and save, and that's all you're going to do with this one. Next, let's play with the egret. So let's go ahead and go into our file and open. Let's go find our folder. We want to go ahead, grab this egret start and open. And what we want to do go ahead on this one is, we want to do it a little differently. Sorry, I lied. Close that up. Let's do file, and let's open as a smart object instead. So let's open that egret start as a smart object. All right, so that gives us the ability to apply some different types of filters that we couldn't necessarily do if we open it just the normal way. Let's do a file, save as. Let's do first initial, last name, underscore Photoshop, classroom in a book, chapter 5. And egret, and let's get rid of the rest of this part at the end and go ahead and save it as a Photoshop and save. All right, we're going to go and say yes. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to play with the blur gallery. So let's go up to filter. Let's come down to blur gallery, and let's come down to iris blur. And with that blur, we can actually create kind of a blur from a center pin. So we're going to drag that center pin. So it's kind of the bottom of the bird's body. And you kind of see how it is adjusting how that blur looks. And if we check, we can play with that ellipse and we can drag it in and out. So if I drag in, I should be able to drag in. So you can see you can drag those to make the blur bigger or smaller, depending on how much you want to do. So A, here is the center. B is the ellipse itself, C is our feather handle, and D is our blur. So we can actually change how much we blur based on how much we play with that handle right there. So it makes a really nice, easy way to create that vignette feeling. So if we hold Alt, we can actually pull each of these handles separately. So let's grab these feather handles. You can actually grab Alt and make those separate. Hit Alt again. So there's quite a few different options you have in order to adjust that blur to be just exactly what you want. And let's go ahead and say it, Control S, and save what we have so far. Now let's go ahead and double click in the blur gallery on the egret layer. So let's go ahead and don't apply yet. Let's see what we're doing. Somehow I've missed something. We want to hit that blur ring. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click on that blur gallery again. Let's go filter and blur, blur gallery. Let's go down into that iris blur. And we've got some different options over here. So we can also change the way that that blur, how much that blur is on. So let's go ahead and take that down to about 5. And I'm going to reset these since I had to close out a little bit. So I can go ahead and hit my Alt and drag. Hit my Alt and drag out a little bit. All right, and if it's too subtle, you can go ahead and increase that blur up just a little bit. So maybe let's try 6. And you know, the egret is accentuated by blurring out the rest. So because we applied it to a smart object, we can hide it or alter it without messing with that original image. So let's go ahead and do a Control S to save. Oh, let's do OK to enter, say yes, and do a Control S to save what we have so far. So you can easily go over here to your smart filter and turn that on and off to see how that element will work. So let's go ahead and make sure you've got that there. And if you do look at the book, there's a whole bunch of different stuff about the blur gallery and what you can do there. So that is all we need to do for the egret. Let's go do a Control Save. And let's go ahead and play with the panorama now. So let's go to our Browse in Bridge, go File, Browse in Bridge. And within this folder you should have one called Files for Panorama. And with no files, we want to make sure everything's closed in Photoshop. Let's close all these down. So I'm going to go back here to my bridge. And we want to go to File, we want to go to, go to Photoshop, go to File, go to Automate. We want to go to Photo Merge, which is down here at the bottom. It's going to pop up some information, say what do you want. We want to go ahead and select Perspective. It's going to say what do you want to do. So we want to blend the images together. We do want the vignette removal to be checked. We want geometric distortion checked, and we want content aware check filled. And it's going to say, okay, where am I getting those files from? So we want to go ahead and say Browse so that it can see over here in Files for Panorama. We want to grab 1 through 4. So I did a Shift click. So I clicked Skyline 1, I hit Shift, I hit Skyline 4, and click OK. So now I have all 4 of those there. And when I go and push OK, it's going to say, it's going to create a single image out of all 4 of those images together. So it's still thinking. So while it's doing this, it's going to go ahead and do some content aware fill. You can see everything that's in those dotted lines is what it has done a content aware fill for. So it's kind of guessed what should go there. And I'm happy with it. So let's do a select and deselect. And let's go ahead and flatten this image. So let's go Layer and Flatten Image. So now I've got one single image. So let's go ahead and save this one. So File, Save As. Let's go Erased, Untitled, Unlimited. Let's say first initial, last name, underscore panorama, or no, Photoshop, Classroom in a Book, Chapter 5, then Panorama. And delete the rest of the stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and put it out in my Lesson 5 folder so I can find it really easy when I want to turn them in. So I've got that there. All right, now we can do a few other things with this to make it even better. I'm going to go ahead and bump this to high because that's what I usually do. Let's go ahead and now play with the levels. So let's go to our adjustments. Let's grab levels, which is the second one in. And we want to go ahead and grab the white point dropper. And we want to go ahead and tell it what should it consider white. So let's go ahead and grab a bit here in the clouds. And you can see it's kind of going to boost that color up a little bit. So it's up to you as to how you're going to determine what is white. So if you told it that is white, whoa, we can undo quite a few. And let's go ahead and grab white one more time. So I kind of liked it when it was in this white over here. All right, so that's nice and bright and looks nice. So let's go ahead and do a Control S and save. And the entire thing is more smooth, so let's go ahead and save. And it's that easy to create that single panorama. So now we want to do a few things like crop it, and the horizon is slightly off. It's a little bit tilted. So we can see how it kind of did a few weird things when it was doing the content aware. So the easiest way to deal with that is to kind of just crop part of that out. So let's go ahead and do a Layer and Flatten Image. So now we brought those levels in. And the next thing we're going to do is grab the crop tool, about the fourth one down, crop tool. And let's go ahead and grab the straighten button and make sure that content aware is selected. And we want to position that straighten pointer on the horizon. So you kind of see it's kind of crooked. So we want to go ahead and run this line along the horizon here. So it's straighter. And you see it's going to kind of now make it nice and straight, which is good. But now we've got some weird white spots that need to be cleared at the bottom of the corners. So let's go ahead and drag that image down until we crop that part out. So let's go ahead and bring that up and bring this down a little bit so you don't see that part that needs to be filled. You could also use your arrows to nudge it up and down a little bit. All right, and when we're happy with it, we say commit, hit the check mark. It's going to go ahead and do all those. And we really easily made 4 pictures into 1 picture, and it's a very nice shot of, I think that's a Space Needle in the background. Let's do a Control S and save, and that's all we're going to do for that one. So the next thing we're going to play with is some image distortion. So let's go to our file, Browse and Bridge. And let's go ahead and grab that column start. So go back out 1 column, or 1 folder, and let's grab those columns start. And if you notice your columns here have some distortion, it looks like they're kind of bowed out. It was shot too close with a wide angle lens, so it creates what's called a lens barrel distortion. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's do a file, save as. Let's do first initial, last name, underscore Photoshop, classroom in a book, chapter 5, and columns. I keep doing percentage. And let's drop all the rest of that out and save. So now we're going to go ahead and do is fix the lens with a filter. So let's go to filter and let's go down to lens correction. And if we do at the very bottom, we want the one that says show grid. And to the right we have automatic corrections that are going on. So let's go ahead and change that to, in the auto correction area, let's make sure that transparency is selected for the edge. And then let's go ahead and select custom. And with custom we want to do the remove distortion, which is right here at the top. And let's make that 52. So it's going to make it nice and flat. So it's going to get rid of that element. But because we auto scaled the image, the lens correction is adjusting the scale at the borders, which may or may not be something we want. So let's go ahead and say OK. All right, so we made it nice and straight. So now what we can do is compare to what we had before. So you can do a Control Z to undo, or you can redo, go back in your history and go back to that lens correction so you can kind of see how much it looks much less bent now at this point. Let's do a Control S and save what we've got on that one. Now we're going to play with our depth of field. So we're going to go ahead and play with those wine glasses. So I'm going to close this one up. Let's do a file, Browse and Bridge, and go grab the glass start. And let's go ahead and double click it. And let's do a file, save as. And let's do first initial, last name, underscore, Photoshop, classroom in a book, chapter 5, glass. And we're going to leave it as a Photoshop document and say save. So in this one, we actually want to do something a little bit different in that we want to combine 2 different layers. So if we look at it, in the layers panel, we've got one that says beach and one that says glass. And each one has got something different kind of in focus. And we want both items to be in focus. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. So let's go ahead and hide the beach layer. And you can kind of see what's going on. So before we can merge these layers, Let's go ahead and let's shift click both layers. So let's click on beach, let's hit shift and hit glass. And let's go to edit. And let's go auto align layers. And it's going to go ahead, because they're from the same angle, it's going to go ahead and it'll work, auto will work just fine. So let's do auto. We don't want vignette removal to be checked or geometric distortion. And then we want to say OK to align those layers. So it's now going to make them up and down on top of each other. So now they're perfectly aligned, we can auto blend them. So you can kind of see both of them going on at once. So let's go ahead and edit and auto blend layers. It's going to say, what do you want to do? We want to go ahead and do stack images, and we want seamless tones and colors to be checked, and we want to make sure that content aware is not checked. And then we're going to go ahead and say OK. So it's going to go ahead and do its magic. And now you'll notice that we have both the wine glass and the beach are in focus. So it's a really nice way to save photos when you don't necessarily have exactly the shot you want. So let's do a Control S and save what we've got on that one. All right, let's go ahead and play with some content aware fill. Let's close that one up and let's go our file, browse and bridge, and go grab the Japanese garden start and double click it. This is one I do not love how this one turns out, but we're going to play with it anyway. So with this one, we're going to go ahead. No, it didn't open. All right, so this is the beginning, and let's go ahead and take a look at the end one as well. In the end, we're getting rid of that other. They did not do a good job of it, and this is not, you know, the best example, but it does kind of give you an idea of how it works. So back on this start one, let's do File, Save As. Let's do first initial, last name, underscore, Photoshop, classroom in a book, chapter 5, and Japanese garden. And let's go ahead and make it a Photoshop document and save. All right, so now we're going to go ahead, as what we're going to do is we need to create a marquee around what we want to get rid of. So we're going to go ahead and grab the lasso tool. So it's about third one down. And in the lasso tool, in the feather, go ahead and set that to about 25. Then we want to make sure anti-alias is on. We want selected mask to be on. So we're going to drag a selection around the rock and the reflection. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to Control plus and zoom in. And I'm going to do my best to get around this rock that I want to make disappear. All right, so now I have my rock. And then let's go ahead and do edit and content aware fill. It's about halfway down. And it's going to say that's a new one. I haven't had that stamping thing come up before. So let's go ahead and let's look at auto. Show what happens when we do auto. All right, so we can kind of see what's going to happen there. You can kind of see what happens if you do rectangular. Not loving rectangular, you get some weird things going on. Or you can come here to do custom. And it doesn't apply that initial sampling area. So use the stamping brush to add an area in order to fill the selected region. So we want to make sure kind of start here. So we're going to go ahead and say this is what we want you to use to copy from. Fill in with this information. So you can kind of see what it's doing over there with that sampling area. So you can see because I have that filter set, that it is, or the feather set, that it gives me that little extra edge. So if I even start doing this and start grabbing this over here, you're going to see I'm going to start getting some weird stuff starting to pop up over in here, and I don't necessarily love that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a minus and take some of that back out, saying don't use this as part of your sampling. So now it's a little bit cleaner over here. Still not loving it, so let's go ahead and add a little bit more over here. Not perfect, but not awful. Let's go ahead and scoot over a little bit. Let's try coming over here. All right, so when you're working with that brush, you know, depending on what size it is, it will really depend on how well this is going to work. So you're going to paint over those unwanted areas, and maybe you want to try even more. What happens if we add even more? It's slightly better, kind of. What if I go ahead and take this part off the top? What if I take these out? Not perfect, but not awful. So you can use that lasso tool. You can change the original selection. We can do a Control D, or we can say OK and apply. We can resample it. So we could go with our lasso here, Control D to undo those dancing ants. You could go back in, go grab this section again. We can go Edit and Content Aware Fill again. Oh, and we want to go ahead and add the part that we're going to put in there. We're going to save. I don't love that. Let's cancel. Let's get out of that one. For now, I'm going to go ahead and let it be. I don't think this is a great example for how this tool actually works. I think it works a lot better when you do it in Chapter 2. But I did want you to kind of see how it works and what is there. All right, so let's do a Control S and save what we've got. And it's not perfect, and I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead and close all these up. And we've got one more thing to do. We're going to add some perspective to an image. So let's go ahead and go our File, Browse and Bridge. Let's go ahead and grab our bridge start with our train and double click it to open it in Photoshop. Let's do a File, Save As. And I'm going to go ahead and do first initial, last name, underscore, Photoshop, Classroom in a Book, Chapter 5, Bridge, get rid of all this other stuff, and say Save. So you see we have a problem here because our train is basically flying, which we do not want flying train. So let's go ahead and fix that. So we're going to select that train layer, and the tracks are on that background, because that way we can apply that perspective work to the smart object and not have to worry about messing with the whole image. All right, so let's go Edit and Perspective Warp. And you should get something that pops up that shows you how to draw the quad and the plane. Mine clearly is not doing that. So we're going to make it work otherwise. I'm going to go ahead and draw my first plane over this section. Bring it over here a little bit. Okay, so I'm dragging this in. Maybe you're going to get the pop-up. I don't know, somehow I turn the pop-ups off on mine or something. All right. That seems like it's too tucked in. Let's go ahead and bring that down. Now let's go ahead and add another plane to kind of show where the cow catcher part at the front is. Okay, so let's go ahead and drag that down. Kind of show it's a little bit different. All right, and we've got the second quad in front. We're going to drag those corners so they match the angles of the train. So I'm not loving how that one is right now. Let's go ahead and bring it out a little bit. And up a little bit. That seems better. All right, so we're going to go ahead and drag those. Now that they're drawn, we're going to go ahead and do the second stop, which is to warp. So we're going to go up here into the top, and we want to do warp. And we want to go ahead and grab the second one with the 3 lines. Automatically straighten. Whoa, And we want to drag those handles to manipulate those planes. So let's go ahead and bring it down so it's sitting on the tracks a little bit. Still have some flying train going on. And maybe bring this forward just a little tiny bit. So it's totally up to you as to how you're going to make it work. That's not working. Alright, so when you're happy with it, you can warp the other parts. When you're happy with it, when you don't want to do anything else, go ahead and hit commit. And you'll see that I now do not have a flying train. I have managed to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and do Control S and save that one. You can play with that perspective warp when you're trying to do things like kind of how you'll do a vanishing point later. It's a matter of figuring out a way to make those all work better together. So that is all you need to do for Chapter 5. There's quite a few things in there, quite a few different tips and tricks, things you can do as you move along. Make sure that you submit when you turn things in. I need a bridge, I need the garden, I need the red eye, panorama, egret, glass, and columns. So make sure you submit all those different elements just as a Photoshop document, or several Photoshop documents at once. And I look forward to seeing how you come up with your solutions.